interesting. Normally we hear a song, so that was weird because there was like absolutely no song on our end. But I'm
Mhm.
sure the audience out there heard the wonderful theme music, which I did not write for Maple Syrup. Welcome everybody. It is Maple Syrup time. Sorry, Hafiz, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say Scott was joking about singing during the tune before we went on, so maybe the
Mhm.
internet was like, no.
We're not going to let you do that. So, hey, everybody. We have with us today Scott Kelly. He
Mhm.
is one half of BS Games, which when I write
I'm
it, I always think of bullshit, but you know,
yeah, I'm the S.
you're the
Yeah,
S and the B.
I'm the S.
So why not SB Games?
People remember BS games a lot
You're not
better,
wrong.
right? So people that get the
Okay.
joke, it's
Mhm.
also one that goes over the heads of the younger kids, but the older people will be like,
Mm,
oh, and then it starts a bit of that conversation. It makes it memorable. So even if
Right.
they don't remember we're Bill and Scott, which they don't sometimes, they'll run into us and they'll be like, wait, one of you is Bill, one Scott, or sometimes it's like
One's B, one's
Bob
S.
and Steve, right? They don't always remember, but at least they can find us on Instagram. They can find us on the website because they remember that part. So, and that's the
Right.
important bit. It's just that once we've met
okay.
once, they remember who we are in case they want us to look us up later. So
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
marketing
welcome,
gimmick.
Scott.
So it's not that
Yeah.
Bill wanted
Thank you.
top billing. He just.
Yeah, we just thought it would be funnier that way, which is
Sure.
kind of motivation for a lot of things in my life. Why'd you do that? Because it was funnier that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks.
We're here to talk to you specifically about
Mhm.
educational games
Mhm.
and using games in the classroom and some of the games that you've designed that are
Mhm.
classroom based for mathematics and things like that.
Mhm.
So before we get started on that, can you tell us your origin story? How did you
Mhm.
get started in gaming? Why games? And why did you start designing these things?
Okay. Do you want to start that part? Because we could start.
Sure.
Um, my my parents met at a school in England. Or is that too far back?
No, I
Um,
mean that's if that's something to do with gaming. If so, then great. Let's
yeah.
go.
Well, it's funny because getting into this and thinking about it and answering questions like that have made me think more about that, which I hadn't really before. Um, I see a lot of games out there, and once in a while they'll be like, "Hey, check out this old game," and I'm thinking, "Wait, I had that game. I played that game like when I was young, like in the late 70s, early 80s, right? So we think about games that used to exist, right? Oh, we live in this world of like how many games are available? It's like this explosion of games over the past 10 years. And before that, there was only Risk and Sorry and Monopoly, and that was it. But that's not at all true. That's kind of the perception we have because those are the ones that have persisted in the public consciousness and have stayed popular. And we know they're old games that have stayed popular for a long time. But there was so much more out there that just kind of fell by the wayside for whatever reason and didn't end up being those mass market, always available in the Walmarts and department stores kind of games like that. Because I keep discovering games that are triggering these memories for me. So my parents were always very supportive of us wanting to play board games at home. So I've been doing that pretty much my whole life. Um, and then through that, getting into high school, meeting friends, being introduced to like Axis and Allies, got right into the Milton Bradley Battlemaster series, Shogun, Fortress America, getting those bigger ones like Risk Plus. It's like Risk with much cooler pieces, and they do different things instead of just rolling d6s, right? And then through there, again, just discovering Dungeons and Dragons. I started playing when I was 9. The friend in my neighborhood who I'd hang around with all the time, somebody introduced it to him when he moved. Actually, he moved out to Oshawa, and then the first time I went to visit him for a weekend in the summer or something like that, he was like, "Hey, so these other guys told me about this game," and we just started playing D&D. So that also was a big jump into more than just the board games, and that led to back to high school, meeting some friends, starting or joining a D&D club at school, which in the 80s was a little bit tougher because of the Satanism and everything. Alleged, supposed, it wasn't real. For those of you who want to research the Satanic Panic, I don't know if most of your viewers remember it and they're rolling their eyes, or if they're younger people who need to go and
That
look
would be
that up. I
great
don't know,
marketing. They should stick
right?
that on the box now, like
Yeah,
now with 100% less Satan, and then
that's right.
yeah,
That's right. And well, some of the additions they did take out, like demons and devils, that were in the early ones, right? Then
Mhm.
took them all out of the monster manual just to avoid that. So, anyway, so but through them, discovered actually simultaneously two different routes. It's kind of weird. I had a friend I met, I think, when I was in grade 11, um, who went on a trip to visit, I think, relatives in England. Came back with a box of Space Marines, like the original RTB-01 Rogue Trader Space Marine box.
With the pointy
And
noses.
oh yeah, the old Mark 6 Beakies. That's right. And he has some space orcs too, the plastic ones. So he's like, "Oh look, and we can paint them." And we're like, "You know, what'd be cool? We could use it to make a game. Like, we'll move them around and like you can roll dice to shoot each other." Having no idea it was already a game. They were just a little box of little soldiers, as far as we were concerned at that point. We hadn't discovered that yet. But then shortly after that, through other friends who I was playing D&D with, went to a games club. It's I can't remember if it was Arendelle or Sheridan. They had a games club. Got invited to that. Some guys were playing Warhammer at another table. They were playing Warhammer 40,000, and I was like, "This is really cool." So then we started to get into that. So with more of the miniature gaming. Um, so between role playing and miniature gaming, there's a lot of that going on, and through that, wasn't satisfied with just playing the games. So this kind of goes to the second part with the designing. Started making new scenarios, inventing new cards for games that had like event cards and stuff like that. And eventually started creating own games, which are fairly derivative of the ones we were already playing at that point. They weren't super original. Just kind of had an idea. So I would take parts of other games we're already playing and kind of take the bits I liked, mash them together, give them a new theme. And I might have thought at some point, hey, wouldn't this be cool if this was a real game? We published it, but it never occurred to me I could really actually do that. So I didn't really put much effort into it. I wasn't super motivated. So we just play amongst ourselves with our little nerdy gaming high school group there. Um, and then that's continued playing games, kind of dabbling and making stuff up. And then I ended up working at Games Workshop. And while I was working at Games Workshop, I was in sales through first warehouse, then mail order, then in retail, and then back to direct services, which they renamed mail order. But while I was in the office, I was creating games there as well, not for to be published, like we weren't studio, but when we had tournaments and things, they needed scenarios. When we had our events, like pretty big events, we had our Canadian Games Day and the smaller versions, what they called conflicts. They wanted stuff for people to do, little games that people sign up for or just kind of show up and play. But not every table is like, okay, here's 20 tables you're playing Warhammer. Here's 20 tables you're playing 40K. So I would create little games using the Games Workshop miniatures, Citadel miniatures, and just make up my own rule sets or modify ones that were already put out in the White Dwarf magazine and just kind of expand them a little bit, just so people could come and play a game or just teach some of the other staff how to play it. They would run it and they would play this game that I'd created, like simple rule sets. So they could learn it real fast. Some interesting little scenario. One was like a big bar fight. We were playing these characters running around the bar, punching each other out. And there's another one where I totally ripped off Quidditch, where you're goblins riding wolves and you're bashing squigs with the balls, and they were running around. But totally ripped off the rule set. I just made it goblins on wolves. Made the miniatures for it and everything. So from there, that then gave me the idea, maybe I could get into the studio and do game design for Games Workshop, because a lot of the people who were high up in the company, this is one of the neat things about Games Workshop. A lot of people have a lot of complaints about business practices, but one of the things I liked about it was that a lot of the guys, maybe not a lot, but at least some of the guys who were up in the studio started in warehouse, mail order, sales division, and they just showed this affinity for the game, and you could progress based on your skill set. They looked within the company for skill sets to move those people up into positions that would be good for them and good for the company, as opposed to I've worked for companies where there's a guy in the warehouse and he wanted to get into sales. He had a business degree, but they wouldn't even look at his resume because he was a warehouse guy. Right. So there's these like ceilings in some of the companies where they're like, no, you're just not who you are. Whereas this one, you could progress. So that was my aspiration for a while, but it didn't totally pan out. And eventually, I left. The Canadian business took a bit of a downturn. They eventually closed the Canadian office, and then I went into how long is the show?
As long as you need. As long as you need.
Okay, cool. We're getting there. We're past the halfway point. So then I went back to university. Well, I say back. I never went in the first place. After high school, I wasn't that academically inclined. Not that I wasn't smart. I just didn't like doing work. So apparently in high school, they require you to do that to get grades. I was a bit of an underachiever. So I decided to go out to university. My wife's idea is I said, what am I going to do now if I'm going to leave Games Workshop? This is all I know how to do, right? So, well, try university. We're learning. You enjoy learning. So, like, remember in high school when I was bad at that? And she's like, university's different, and now you're older. I was like about 35, I think, at this point. So, you know what? You can go back as a mature student. I'm now legally required to do this when I say mature. So I don't know. So what are those language courses? You like language, and I always have. I was actually at Games Workshop doing a lot of editing, a lot of stuff. Again, small group there. The Canadian office is fairly small, but they did start putting out their own materials online. They had their own section of the website. They were producing printed materials from the Canadian head office, and sometimes things went out with typos and grammatical errors. So eventually, I said, anything that goes out, put it on my desk before you put it out, and I will look over it for free just to make sure, right? Because I'm tired of seeing these mistakes. So I kind of got a bit of an unpaid editing position there as well, just because I enjoyed it. Stuff to do with language, reading books about language, that kind of thing, language origins. Anyway, so my wife says, why don't you look into language? So I looked at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, because I already had a house. I'm not going to apply to go live in residence in some program at the best school somewhere. It was University of Toronto or is nothing, because I'm not really traveling that far. But I did a bridging course, got in. I'm looking at the language program, linguistics specifically, and I'm reading the course catalog. I'm looking at all the courses thinking, this looks really cool. Oh, that looks really neat. That looks like kind of fun. I'd like to learn that. So there it was, right? So, okay, there is a program that seems to be for me. And, you know, they say C's get degrees, they say, right? So I go in there, I do my best, I come out with a degree, and at least then I've got some skills and I'm more employable. At least that was my plan going in. By the end of the first term, when I'm running like a 90, 92 average, suddenly it became about the marks, which it wasn't before. I was just going to kind of do my thing, but now I'm like, I need better marks. I'm doing great. I'm really enjoying this whole getting good marks thing, right? And that goes to show the maturity part of it too, right? One of the things I did notice, because I was taking first year and second year courses at the same time in my first year, the difference between the first year students and the second year students was massive as far as commitment to maturity. The first year really is like a proving ground. Either they go through it and they go, wow, that's not for me. So much work. I can't handle this independence. They drop out. Or they go, wow, that was tougher than I thought it would be. And they sort themselves out and they come back for the second year much better prepared. So it's really interesting to see that difference there. Anyway, so I go through that language degree. Let's skip 5 years. 5 years ahead. I stayed an extra year to work on a special project at the university. They actually hired me a few times to do different things. I started working there mostly in tutoring, because in linguistics, actually this is kind of relevant, I guess. The department, it was a high risk course, meaning not that it was dangerous. That would have been funny though. But a lot of people dropped it because people went into it needing a humanities breadth requirement, because they're all doing some sciences or something else. Most engineering was downtown Mississauga. There wasn't as much of that. But anyway, they went into it not knowing what it was, and then they're all dropping it by the end of the semester or early on. And the linguistics department's like, we need to retain some students in the department. And they found a lot of the students weren't going to office hours, talking to professors and things like that, but they were talking to me. I early on developed a following. I had a group of students who actually followed me around asking for help with their homework, because as soon as I started, as I kind of maybe had foreseen, because I was reading a lot of books about language, it was already an interest of mine. Even in the intro, the 100 level course, the 3-hour lecture, professor, teacher, she brings stuff up, and I'm in my seat going, oh, that's why that happens. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I knew that already. Oh, here's another example of that. And then we get to the intermission partway through, the little break, and I'm looking around. All of the students around me are like, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm so confused. So I just kind of sidle over and go, you look confused. What if I explained it like this? And I kind of explained it a slightly different way. And they're like, oh, that makes sense now. Okay. So then now I've got this group who are kind of following me around, helping them with the homework and re explaining stuff for them. Because it was a pretty small department. There weren't, I say a lot, but I saw the same people in almost all the classes within that department, within that program. Anyway, so because it's so small, the faculty started to notice and get wind of this. So they actually hired me so I could do office hours for the students who were a little bit too nervous to talk to the actual professor and admit they were struggling because they knew that they were coming to me. And then later on, we skip ahead a couple of years, they actually asked me to help run a pilot project to run facilitated study groups to help actually teach the students the information that was being learned in the class. Again, just to help them. A few regulars came through like every single week. They'd show up and we'd chat and I'd help them out. But the 2 days before the exams, suddenly we got like 40 people showing up. I'm like, I haven't been showing up like every week. I don't think I can help you in the next hour if the exam's in 2 days. But those who did show up apparently did fairly well. So right at the end, one of the professors there, she also teaches at OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, which is the U of T teacher education program. And she said to me, we've been noticing you've been doing a lot of this help. Have you ever thought about going into teaching? And I was like, no, I hated high school. I'm not going back there. But she said, well, think about it. There's this program not many people know about. So I did. I said, you know what? I'm not sure what else I'm going to do. I finished my degree. I don't know what you do with a linguistics degree. I enjoyed it. I loved the experience and all the learning. So I applied for the master's in linguistics and I applied for this other teaching one. It wasn't just a regular BEd. It was MT, which is Master of Teaching. So it was a 2-year program when the BEds were only 1-year programs, but you came out with a master's equivalent degree at the end in the 2 years without having to do. So it's not an MEd, which is different, but still counts as a master's degree. So I thought, what the heck, I'll give that a try. So I did. And in the second year, this is where we're really getting to it now. One of their projects assignments was to create something that would help students learn. And I come up with an idea for helping kids really understand math, just basic arithmetic, plus and minus, but how to take the regrouping and make it really obvious what's happening. Trading in 10 of these beads for one of these beads and vice versa, and actually using 9 dots to represent the 9 possible digits you can have. But what made it interesting, I thought, was you rolled your 10-sided dice to create your own numbers, and then you populate the little dots with the beads, and then you would add them together over here. And if you had too many, more than 9, then you trade in 10 for a group of 10 sort of thing. And it was really about regrouping. But the fact there were dice in it, it wasn't really a game because there's no decision making to be made, but it was game-like. And it got pretty good reviews from other students and the faculty who were reviewing it and things like that. But of course, I did it on Microsoft Word, and I don't have any graphic abilities whatsoever. So it was just like dots that barely lined up and didn't quite fit on the page unless I adjusted the margins until they were ridiculous. So once that was done, I called up Bill, who I used to work with at Games Workshop. He left a couple of years before I did to continue pursuing his graphic design, because that's what he went to school for. So he actually ended up doing some graphic design projects freelance. And he worked at Mississauga News laying out all their ads and things like that using his graphic design stuff. So I called him up and said, I got this idea, and can you make it look pretty? So we got together, we talked about it, and we did. We called it the subtract and adder, and we put a snake on it, which is like the little mascot of it, because it's an adder, right? So you got to throw some puns in there. It's a math game, but I got to put language stuff in there. And we're going to market it. We're going to put that out there. We're going to, pitch it to all the learning resource companies and stuff like that. And we never finished it. Well, it's kind of finished. It's ready to go. It works, but we never put it out there because partway through, I was teaching. I'd gotten through that part, again, skipping ahead a little bit. And that's when I got the idea for Mathemagician's Duel. And that is the beginning of my story. There we go.
All right. Very cool. Very cool.
There's a lot. Is anybody there still following along?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Is there a quiz at the end?
No, there's not.
Oh, that'd
No,
be
there's
interesting
no
thing to
there's
add in.
no
All right.
there's no formative or
Give
summative
out points.
assessments.
Oh, gamify
No.
it. Make people
No, why
get
would you
points
do
or
that?
something.
They
All
do
right.
that at school.
No, it's all
Okay,
I do that at
so
participation. If they show up
Right.
and they
Oh,
message in the
good.
chat, they get
Yeah.
100%.
there you go.
Excellent.
So games in the classroom. So you've
Yep.
talked about the games that you're working on and designing for the classroom. You're getting built to help you.
Mhm.
And what does this look like? What do the first iterations of these things look like?
It's interesting using games like pre-made games already out there. I thought I invented that idea. I'm going into school. I'm going to be a teacher. Still just first couple of years doing a lot of supply work, thinking about what I would do in my classroom when I eventually have one as a permanent position. And I'm thinking, I can use this game and that game, and this will teach that. I invented this whole concept of using games to teach kids stuff. And I looked into it, and it turns out it's already a thing. But because I don't, follow in the circles of all the theory and the and such, that I didn't know that there's already a big thing all about that. So I started looking into that a little bit. So it's almost like there's two topics there. There's the using pre-made, pre-published games, not necessarily ones that are educational games, but just other games and using them for educational purposes. And then, of course, the second part is creating games specifically to use in the classroom. And I don't remember the exact wording of your question. Which one of those did you want to talk about?
All of them.
Okay. A lot of the games that are out there, they're educational games, are boring. I think because they are created by educators to teach a skill. So we're going to teach this. And this varies, obviously. This is a bit of an overgeneralization. There's obviously a spectrum of success from those who have attempted to do this. But some of them are really just, it's like I've taken your homework and I'm giving you points for doing it, for getting it correct. Here's a game. Flip over two cards. And this is one we actually do get in like professional development workshops and stuff where they're saying, hey, let's play games in the classroom. Kids will get more engaged in math if you do it like a game. It's as simple as having a deck of cards or a pair of dice. Just roll the dice, and whoever multiplies them first gets a point, which is great if you already know how to do that. If you have fast math processing, you know your timetables really well, that's your favorite game because you're winning all the time. If you're still struggling and you're still trying to learn that, you're still working on that automaticity, then you hate that game because you never win, and it increases your frustration with math instead of helping you get past. But it's a game, it's fun, it's helping you with math. So yeah, but I lose every time I play. That's not fun, right? It's frustration. And unfortunately, I think that's sort of what you get. I think that works with any time you try to implement something new without really breaking down what works about that thing. You get kind of like some buzzwords or like, here's kind of an idea, and we go, great, I'll just implement that. But you're not really understanding what it is that's being implemented. And you end up with something that is boring and kind of counter to what you're trying to do, which is create a game that will engage kids and have them use those skills, but not in a way necessarily where they feel like they're being rewarded just for doing the thing that they were going to do anyway on the homework, like the worksheets, that kind of thing. And that's sort of how I approached Mathematician's Duel. Coming from a gaming background and having done a lot of gaming, and even the whole time too, research, right? I think a lot of things I kind of picked up just from gaming, but hadn't really done any study in it. I know there are game design courses out there where people talk a lot about the theory, and there's a lot of it. It's been a lot of research, I think, over the last 10, 15 years or so, maybe more so than previous years, on what makes a game work and what is a game and things like that. But just knowing that it has to be fun first, there has to be some meaningful choices in there. There has to be some kind of reward that isn't just, hey, yay, you won, but something throughout the game. All those kind of principles need to be in there, because you can also play snakes and ladders. That'll help kids learn math, right? The younger kids, you roll and did you count the right number, right? You're learning to add numbers up to 6 or count to 6. But there's a big debate: does snakes and ladders even really a game? Because it's a complete game of chance, right? There's no skill whatsoever involved. I joke sometimes about running a snakes and ladders tournament for all the best snakes and ladders players out there, right? Because you can't be a good snakes and ladders player because there's no choice whatsoever, right? Unless whoever can like put the right spin on the die to get it to land where they want. I don't know, but at that point, is that just cheating? So I think kids can kind of see through that, and there's not really any longevity to playing those games in class, because they'll go, okay, we're doing this, but first of all, are they really learning what you want from it? Are they practicing skills? And are they really engaged? Probably more so than if you just gave them a bunch of worksheets or extra homework or something like that, though. So I think trying to find or create games that are interesting and are good games first, that teach the skill or just use the skill, right? And again, that was a bit of the philosophy for Mathematician's Duel. It's not going to teach you to add and subtract. You already have to know how to do that. But it is just use of that skill and the strategies surrounding that skill. The best adder or subtractor, the fastest adder or subtractor, is not going to win at Mathematician's Duel. You don't have to be the fastest. You just have to have some good mathematical strategic skills on how do I get to that number from where I am now? What's the chance of me getting the number that I need? Should I take a different path? Is it best for me to sabotage my opponent this turn, or should I work on my own spell this turn? So it does lend interesting decisions. And I think that might be what gets lost out of games that are created specifically to be educational, where the goal of that is, did you learn that skill at the end of the game, or did you learn those facts at the end of the game, right? Again, roll, move, answer the question. If you know the answers, you do great, right? If you don't, then you don't. So I think that's why maybe trivia games are probably pretty polarizing. People who study a lot of facts have good memories. They remember a lot of facts. They do well at trivia. They love it. People who don't, they won't even, why they would even play a trivia game? They know they're going to lose because they don't know the topic that is being tested. And so I liken a lot of stuff that comes in for education to those, right? There's snakes and ladders or trivia games, where those who are already good at it just get better at it, and those that don't just become frustrated. So trying to work out something where you can, isn't to say sneak the learning in, right? I think they should know that they're learning something and that they are improving skills, but maybe not necessarily right away. The kind of thing they can look back, the students or whoever's playing it, and say, oh yeah, I now figured this out because it came up in the game. Or I kind of had to use this skill, or I had to do this, but now I can do it outside of the game. Things like that, right? So just work those skills in so they're using them, but don't make it the whole point of the game. Again, like I like to say when I'm describing Mathematician's Duel, it's not math for math's sake. It is math for the purpose of destroying your opponent, which is like the best motivation.
So
I was going a while again. Yep.
when you're designing, when you're planning games, because you mentioned the educational piece, that should be for teachers that start with, okay, they're gonna learn this one skill. You can very easily turn into focus on the skill rather than the fun where the skill is being activated and being used. So when you're designing, how do you balance that? Do you start with the idea and then think about how can I make this game educational? Or do you have an idea in mind for something you would want to bring into the class and then try and build a game around that?
I think a little bit of both. I imagine that anyone who has sat down to design a game knows that the final product or where it goes is not always where it started. In fact, probably very infrequently. I got this idea, but then I got this other idea, but this part didn't kind of work. Oh, I can do this. And sometimes you're doing a whole different game than what you started, and you put that aside and come back to it later because you're totally inspired. You inspired yourself with some of your ideas, but you've inspired yourself to do something a little bit different. But I find when I am, because I do, right, then can I make a game to help with this? There is that balance where you definitely don't want to leave the skill behind and have it just fun, because you need to justify, I think, using it in the classroom. We're going to play this. Why? Well, because it will help them understand this. But at the same time, you do want it to be interesting and fun. Now, have I come up with an idea, then said, hey, I can make this educational? I don't think so. I think anything that I've come up with where I wanted it to be something fun and specifically in the classroom, I did have in mind something specific that I wanted it to achieve or to accomplish. I have another one, not published. I have a few things I kind of come up with. I just played with the class, but haven't actually put out. It's for practicing angles, just using a protractor. I use it at the beginning of my angles unit just to get students to practice. Do they remember how to use a protractor effectively? And it's a hex grid on 11 by 17. And I have them draw like a little laser cannon on their side of the board, on the side of the paper. Then I get a couple little crystals. The standard ones that every game that has crystals in it has that same molded crystals. I'll drop a couple of those on the board, and the idea is, without looking at the protractor, you call an angle, and there's actually 3 or 4 different ways to play. But the idea is you're either trying to capture those rocks with your tractor beam, or you're trying to laser them onto your opponent's side of the board to break their base. So you call an angle, and once you set it, you then I've laminated the boards too, the paper. You put your protractor down, you measure the angle, you get a ruler, you draw it with a dry erase marker. If it goes through the hex that the rock is in, then the rock either moves back towards you if you're trying to capture it, or it moves towards your opponent. And you roll a d6 to see exactly what angle it goes. You roll another d6 to see how far it goes. So it's changed position. And then your opponent goes, and you swap the protractor back and forth. So I find the students really do enjoy that, because the purpose, again, I haven't said by the end of this you must know how to use a protractor, but if they don't know or don't figure it out during the course of the game, they're not going to do very well. But each turn gives them the opportunity to learn it. It's not a case of you do or you don't, like in trivia, for example, or you can and you can't, like do a multiplication in a fraction of a second faster than your opponent. But if you go, I don't know, 60 degrees and you actually measure it and it's like 105 degrees, then you're like, oh, I've been using the wrong side of the protractor, right? That's way off. So on my next turn, I can adjust until eventually, after a few turns, they start to get an idea. Okay, it's directly in front of me. That's got to be 90. So they pick 90 and they miss. Like, okay, I'm going to go 85, but they still miss on the other side. So they're like, man, the further away it is, the more precise I have to be. Oh, because when it was close, if I picked 84 or 87, both of them would hit that rock. But when it's far away, they both miss by a lot. So I need to go somewhere in the middle. So there's one that they can work through. And as I was coming up with the idea, they're using the protractors is how the game works, and they will learn from it as they go. But because it's such an intrinsic part of just what they have to do, the main mechanism of the game to achieve the goal, they don't necessarily see it as learning. Again, not sneaking it in. They know they're practicing using protractors. What is more fun than just giving them a whole page of angles and going, measure all these angles? Okay, now on the back of the page, right? Now on the back of the page, here's a list of 20 angles, draw them. Right? It kind of achieves the same purpose, but they're much more interested in doing it.
Yeah, it's engaging.
Right? And it'll stay in their memory a bit better, I think, right? Oh, hey, remember that time that I drew an angle on the back of the page and it was supposed to be 20 degrees and I totally drew it at 20 degrees? That was so cool. No. Remember that time that I shot at the rock and I just caught the edge of it, but I missed, so I adjusted and then I got it and it moved closer to me and then you missed it because it moved and then I got it and I won, right? Which is a better story that you're going to be talking about later, right?
Right.
So you create those moments like they were trying to create in games. If you can do those moments where it was exciting, and it was exciting because they did a thing where they used that skill or they figured something out, and it made them excited to have figured that out because it helped them do better at the game, then that's when the skill starts to stick around, right? Because it encodes better in the memory when it's associated with an emotion.
We
and a sense of accomplishment as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
We call that "Hey Dad"
Yeah.
therapy. It's
Oh, yeah.
so when you're setting therapeutic goals for people or with people, you don't do it for them, but with them,
Mhm.
they often want to do. I want to do this very technical thing, and but I said,
Mhm.
would anybody know if you told them that you did it, that you did something? And
Mhm.
so I say, well, what if you told your dad or anybody? It's just called "Hey
Mhm.
Dad" because
Mhm.
it's this funny saying, like, "Hey
Mhm.
Dad, I was able to ameliorate the conditions that I live in." It's
Mhm.
like that doesn't sound good, but "Hey Dad, I got a job." That's
Mhm.
something to crow about. And the same
Right.
thing here. It's like, "Hey Dad, I drew lines with my protractor." Is
Mhm.
not as cool as saying, "Hey Dad, I shot down 10 alien spaceships."
Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And that was another version I was working on. That you mentioned it too.
I mean, those
Um,
kids are just
the
going to be
retheming it.
aces at like scorched
Yeah.
earth or worms or whatever games
Yeah.
use the whole angle and force thing, right?
Yeah, I did think of trying to create like an analog version of asteroids doing that as well, using 360
Yeah.
degrees rather than just the 180. Right. And can you move a little bit? Yeah, you can move your little guy, right? That makes it a bit more complex, but we did actually consider making as many games I can think of, maybe 5 or 6 different games that just use that same hex board
Yeah,
and a
that's cool.
protractor, put them all the rule sets in one box and go, here you
Yeah.
go, here's a bunch of games.
Yeah.
But those are a bit
Teachers
more
pay
difficult.
teachers.
Yeah, there you go, right? But they are a little bit more difficult to market outside of that,
Yeah.
to put actually out there because it does seem fairly niche. No, I don't think at this point. You never know what might catch on. Adults enjoy Mathematician's Duel as well, right? We
Yeah.
knew we were fighting the stigma of, oh, it's an educational game because it's math, so it's just for kids. But we
Mhm.
play tested with adults at Snakes and Lattes. We did a few of their designer nights back in 2019, and we were play testing there. And we did get adults who come by. It was, hey, you want to try our game? Because they're there, just they know it's designer night. They're gonna play test some new games, and they go, oh, has it got math? It's like, you're an adult. This is addition and subtraction, single digit numbers. Why are you scared of this? And then we'd get some of the reluctant ones to sit down because that kind of was our audience. Actually, is reluctant. Or math anxious or reluctant math people. And some of the feedback we got was, and this isn't like word for word, it's a bit of a paraphrase, but I think it's kind of close. At first, I was worried because of the math, but by halfway through the game, I didn't care about the math anymore. I was just trying to defeat my friend. And that's exactly what we were going for, right? That feedback was the best thing for us to hear because that's what our goal was, right? Yeah, we're learning, we're doing the skills, we're doing repeated math over and over again, but we don't feel like we're doing repeated math over and over again. It didn't feel like a chore, it didn't feel like homework. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the educational games need to be, is they shouldn't just feel like homework for points. You're doing the skills, you're doing the learning, but in a way that doesn't feel like homework or a chore, that sort of thing. I think that's kind of where that sweet spot is. You make it too fun though, where you can do it without the learning. And I don't want to, denigrate other products, but a lot of the online ones, because they were pushing tech, right? Modern learners get them all on the computers, which of course are making a big
Right.
reversal on right now. If you're watching news and stuff, but one of the big ones was with Prodigy and a couple of the games that were similar. And I'd supply before I got in permanent, and I would go to classes where teachers want to leave fairly easy plans sometimes. So they go, okay, everyone's got a Prodigy account. This time we're doing Prodigy, or they're going to this website. They know how to log in, just kind of supervise. They got their account. They're going to do
Yeah.
this math online. And frequently, whatever games they're playing, they play for like 40 minutes without doing a single math question, maybe one or two, because they can run around. They can
Right.
visit their friends. They can go shop for hats. They can go look at the pets. They can go explore, right? I'm like, where's the math? I also saw a
Well,
few
they're
that were
shopping for
online.
hats. They're gonna be, they're spending
Yeah.
money.
Well, yeah.
That's
Well,
happy.
there you go. Right. I got like whatever the coin is, right? Oh, 45. I only got 30. I don't have enough to buy this particular hat.
How
That's
much more do
true.
you need?
Right. Build that in. But I saw another one. It wasn't that one. Another online one. Maybe one you didn't need an account. And don't get me started on coolmathgames.com, which has hardly any math games on it. They just call it that so kids can say they're playing math games, where they're like playing other random games that have no math involved. Anyway, but there was one. It was assigned. It was math. And I watched a student literally every time their little character jumped on another platform and you have to answer a question before you can jump on the next one, they would guess, they get it wrong. and they would just guess because there's multiple choice, right?
Right.
Click on the correct answer, and no, not that one, not that one. There it is, there it is. And they went through it really quickly because they did not a single calculation, right? They just
Right.
guess until they got to the top, and they went, "Yay, I'm good at this," right? Whereas you get stuff out where kids are sitting across from each other, and then they can't, right? You can't just like
Right.
fake your
Yes.
way through it, right? And it almost forces engagement, and I think that's a much bigger benefit of having games like that than just saying, "Look, here's the screen, answer the questions,"
Yes. Because
sort
somebody's
of
going to
thing.
call you out when you
Yeah,
get it wrong, and you just lost the game for the whole team or whatever. Right.
exactly, exactly. So, trying to
Yeah, the
think some of this
competition side of it.
random
Some
stuff.
kid is going to be like, he's doing it wrong. He's cheating.
Right? There you go, right? And I think you need that. And then of course you get that's another whole set of skills right there, right? The social aspect of it too. Where if you're just looking at a screen, you can cheat the screen, the program or whatever, or just not really engage with it. It doesn't care. But those skills of being able to work within a group, take turns, call out someone who might be cheating, know that you're not supposed to be cheating, and how it affects others is a whole other set of
Mhm.
skills there that aren't necessarily academic, but still super important.
Yeah. And you're active on both sides. Like, I'm not just doing
Mm-hmm.
calculations on what I'm doing. I'm also paying attention to the
Mm-hmm.
calculations on your side in case you get it wrong because I want to call you out on it because I don't want you to get that edge
Right,
on me.
right.
Right.
And that's actually a mechanic we specifically built into Mathematician's Duel. Because bit of a debate within the not to say debate, but a discussion within the gaming community and game design is the multiplayer solitaire idea, right? I'm going to do my thing, you're going to do your thing. Which one of us does it better, right? But we wanted definitely to have interaction within this and within Mathematician's Duel. If you reach the number that you're supposed to reach, build your incantation so it matches the number on your spell, and you say the words on the spell, you've officially cast it. Your opponent double checks it. That's written right into the rules. They have to agree that it's correct, because if it is not correct, the spell backfires on you, and you lose the magical strength, and you've hit yourself with your own spell. And we actually have to put the words in there. Again, playtesting with kids. It was really good that I developed this while I was working out of school, and because when I knew that we had something that I had to tell Bill that we should work on this is when kids were asking me as the lunch bell rings to go out for recess, can we stay in and play your game? We want to play the math game instead of going outside. Or even we're finished our test early. Can we go sit in the hall and play the game instead of like reading or whatever else we were going to do? So that's why I said to Bill, there's something to this. I think we should develop this one further. But I forgot the point of my story. What was I
That's
saying
okay.
right before that? Oh my gosh. Oh, right. So as the rules were developing, the kids would say, "Oh, I cast my spell," and their opponent would look and go, because they know it's wrong. So the player casting it would go, "No, wait," and they'd double check it. So that's why you had to put in that rule of once you said this, there's no taking it back. So there's a little phrase on the bottom of each card, which is you casting the spell. So it's really interesting to watch kids how they play, because you get a sense of how. And this again, playtesting, right? You get a sense of how you think it's going to play, then you put it in front of people, especially younger people, and see what they do with it. And then you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, like even with Sonoda, somebody I had to put it in the rule book because someone actually asked while we were playtesting an early prototype, can I capture my own pieces for points? Like, what? That didn't occur to me that I would just go, I'm going to make this one worth a lot of points, then capture it with my buddy. Look how many points I've got because I captured all my own pieces. So I thought we better write that into the rules somehow, because if it doesn't say you can't, someone's going to try it. So, yeah, that
Gamers are
was
weird
really
that way.
interesting.
Yeah,
Right?
game in the game.
So, exactly. So, but that is a great way to make sure your stuff works. You never want to get caught in a loop where something happens in the game where there's no way to get out of it, or no rule that governs the situation. And that's what I like about, listen, it sounds a bit arrogant, what I like about the games that we make. is we try to achieve that. I like small, self-contained rule sets where every situation is easily covered by a few rules without having to worry about edge cases and have what if this happens, what if that happens, what if that happens. And I love playing other games where I come up with a scenario because it's what I do. I try to mess stuff up. Oh yeah, but what if this happens? Then I go, oh wait, that'll never happen because of this rule over here prevents that from ever happening. Right. So I'm always trying to create edge cases when I play. I'm trying to break
your
games
game,
and
yeah.
find problems with it. Right. It's even established ones. But I just love it when that happens, where I come up with a problem, a potential problem, and then it occurs to me the rule set never allows that problem to actually happen, or there's a built-in fix for it. I just maybe haven't read that line in the rule yet.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So we sure try to incorporate those, especially in the classroom when you're hoping to tell the kids how to play it and go, here you go, you're on your own. While I go do something over here and help this set, and then you can kind of wander around. And you want to observe how they're playing and how they're using the skills, not constantly answering rules questions and explaining them what to do next because this thing came up.
That leads to a really good question. At least I think it's really good. What are some of the most important characteristics of a game that you can use in a classroom? Not educational necessarily, but a classroom game, a game that you can use in a classroom that meets an educational goal.
So there's a few things. I'm going to start with school appropriateness. This one might seem kind of obvious, but I would mention it anyway. With Mathematician's Duel, it's kind of funny because I wanted to be school appropriate because the intent was to hopefully get it being used in schools. I never use the word health, damage, or dead in the rule book, and nor do I explain it that way to the kids. You have this much magical strength. You're trying to reduce your opponent's magical strength to 0, so they're too weak to continue. They can no longer cast spells. That being said, I teach it that way. 3 turns later, some students saying, 4 damage, you're dead, right? And I'm like, all right, well, that's you, right? That kids be kids, right? But definitely a main thing I think would be in general school appropriateness, right? Make sure that the topic, the themes fit the level that you're teaching at. All right, even something historical war games. We have a lot of students, especially in this region, who are from a lot of different parts of the world, and many of those parts of the world are in conflict right now. So even trying to teach grade 7, which covers 3 wars, I really enjoy using 1754 French Indian War and 1812 Invasion of Canada, both by Academy Games. I think they're really good. They have event cards which very much match things that actually happened. Like the cards are named after people and events that happened during those 2 conflicts or time periods, and the effect they have on the game is not random. It's just a clever name for the card. The effect in the game mirrors what it's named after. And I think that's really clever. So I like using those because it makes the students match that. But I would be careful introducing war games that aren't somewhat abstracted. These ones use cubes rather than actually little soldiers, and they represent units, not individual people being killed. Because I think that could be challenging to introduce that for students who do come from a war-torn area, to kind of have to relive that in the classroom. So that's something I would be careful of. So definitely appropriateness in that way. That's one thing. And the other, just making sure there's something you can make a bit of a lesson out of that the students will notice. Not so explicit they think it's only educational. But if they play the game, like, hey, we had fun today. What'd you do? We played games in class. It was like free period. Yay. All right, well, what did you learn from that? Well, nothing. We were just playing games. Right? You have to make sure that there's some way to have them get something out of it. Whether it's intrinsic learning from the skills introduced through the game itself or some sort of follow-up. Go back to grade 7 because that one is kind of my favorite. When I do use those 2 games, 1754 and 1812, there's a whole project that goes with it, like a huge, big, it's like 4 or 5 page handout that I give them before they play the game that tells them what they have to watch out for and what they need to do. And some of it is what card did you use you thought was interesting? What was the effect of that card in the game? And how is it related to the person or event it's named after? So they actually have to do a little bit of research to make those connections. Some of them will make connections immediately. Others, you do need to have that little bit of go find a connection between these. And just that finding the connection, that is so much learning as well. Even if they don't make the connection right away on their own, just the looking things up. One of the other things I asked them to do is name something that happened in your game that also happened in real life. And on the maps, of course, they have named cities and regions that were actually fought over during those two conflicts. And I've seen students in the middle of the game fight a little battle, find the results. Let's say 1812, for example, and they'll look at it and they'll go, okay, we just fought a battle here. Oh, and we won. We're playing the British and we beat the Americans here. And they'll look and they'll say, oh, it's at this place. They go, wait, who actually won a battle there? Was there a battle there? And next thing you know, they got the Chromebooks open. They're Googling Battle of whatever, War of 1812, to see if there was actually a battle there and who won it, because now they can write that down on in their final report. And they're doing that either mid-game or they're making a note of it to come look at it later on. So I do a lot of teaching ahead of time. I guess another thing I would mention too, a bit of pre-teaching. Not all games are let's play the games and learn directly from that. They need to have some background information and some scaffolding so they know what to look for in that game. Another one would be 1754, where one of the players playing the British played the George Washington card, because of course George Washington was a colonel in the British militia at that point, because it's pre-America, right? And the George Washington card allows you to build a fort somewhere in one of the locations. And on the map, all the locations where the actual forts are actually labeled on the map and named. So the one player decided, oh, the best place for a fort right now would be in this territory, because that's where a lot of conflict's about to happen. And I said, well, where are you building the fort? He said, oh, it's Fort Necessity. I said, wait. Oh, he says, oh, that was the one that George Washington actually built. That was the one that kind of triggered the whole conflict anyway. So I was like, so what are you going to do now? And he goes, I'm going to write that down because I can use that in my report. So then he writes that down because it's something we'd already learned about. He sees it happen. And again, those connections, right? Something that you're more likely to remember now. Yeah, he saw it in a video. We talked about it a little bit. Maybe we might have read about it in textbook together, but would he have remembered it? But then having that experience, again, more emotional response is better to encode those memories than just having seen it in the video or read it in the book. But to experience it and go, oh yeah, I did this thing, and wasn't that cool? Now, is it important for the rest of his life that he remembers that George Washington built Fort Necessity? Maybe not. But I tell the students this as well. It's all these facts I'm telling you, unless someone stops you on the street, some talk show host stops you on the street and asks you easy questions just to embarrass you by putting you on the YouTube channel because you can't answer these easy questions, you're probably not going to need a lot of these facts. But the way you learn them is important. So if I can get them to recognize that they can learn through this process by playing games and making those connections, hopefully that's something that sticks with them. Maybe more important than whatever the facts are that we're learning or using these to learn in the first place. The process, I think, is really important. And I do tell them outright. I'm very honest with them about that, right? I also tell them that I better not see them on some YouTube channel of the stupid people on the street.
Not knowing the right answers.
Yeah, at the very minimum, right? Know that. I don't want to. You want to be one of the ones on the cutting room floor, as it were, that they couldn't use because you got them all right, and that's just not funny enough to be on the compilation. So, yeah.
That's actually a great segue into the next
Okay.
part of this. We're nearing the end of the session, and we normally like to end off with some final advice. So one is, don't be on the YouTube channel where they try and make you look like an idiot. But
Yep.
do you have any other advice? It could be about games. It could be to educators thinking about maybe diving into this, or anything outside that.
That's a tricky one because I don't know if there's like so much or not enough. Um, I would I would advise educators to try to use games. But I would also say don't give up too easily because it does not always go well the first couple times you try it. The students are pretty unpredictable. It's tricky to find ways to get them all engaged at the same time, especially with some of these bigger board games like I was talking about in grade 7. I would introduce 3 games at the same time and spend a whole period on each game just teaching how to play it, and then make sure partnered people up. So 2 students would play a single person or like a single player. Trying to think, 1754 for sure. I think it's 5 players. One's I think I can't remember if it's 4 players and 5 players or 5 players and 6 players. I'm trying to remember now. No, I think it's 5 players. Yes, 5 players for 1812. So I get 10 kids playing. That way, if you partner them up, you get more playing at once, and one can record something while the other one's making decisions. If one doesn't quite understand, the other one can help them through it. So definitely partnering them up so they have some support is good, and having multiple things to do at the same time. So teach a few games, have them playing, and if you don't have enough to have everyone playing at once, just make sure you have some other activity and rotate. Right, just rotate them through. I tell you though, one year some of the guys got into it so much they really enjoyed it, that they would play at lunchtime, and I'd let them play while they were eating, so they'd have more time. But within the hour lunchtime, they could set up 1812, play a full game, and pack it up and put it away just as the final bell went to end lunch. So within that 1 hour, they could play not the complete game, just like an introductory version of the game where you only play 2 turns. It's still a satisfying game. But they were able to do that. They would come in, they'd set up, they get going, and they enjoyed it. So that's a bit of a side thing there. Make sure everyone's occupied. Make sure you understand what it is you're trying to do with the game. I think we touched a bit on that earlier. You asked, like, what would you do with the game? Definitely don't just put it out there and go, here, play this game and learn something. You want to have a purpose to it. You want to have a bit of a follow-up. You want to have something to check their understanding. So even if it's just developing some questions, the little survey afterwards, what did you get out of the game? What did you learn from it? What did you do? What strategy did you use? Just to make them think about the thinking. And definitely I would give any questions or survey or any assignment around a game ahead of time. Let them pre-read it so they know what to think about going into it. So it's not just a surprise at the end and they don't remember. Oh, this interesting thing happened in turn 2. What was it? I don't remember. Oh man, I would have written about that if they knew what they were expected to do as a follow-up before the game. It'll have them focus more on that aspect while they're playing the game, and they won't feel like they've forgotten and then have nothing to write about afterwards. If you're making games, don't overthink them. Make them kind of simple but still kind of fun. They don't have to be big, long, involved games. I came up with a game like on the spot a couple months ago. I had a couple of students hanging about, and I can't remember exactly why. Either they're finished other work or it was lunchtime and it was raining and they're looking for something to do. And I just handed them each a die. I think it was a 20 or a 12-sided die. I said, roll, and whoever rolls higher wins. Again, not one with any choices in it, but I just wanted them to give them something to do. Higher roll wins, but if you lose, you get to add 1 to your die roll. Oh, sorry, I did it the other way. Lower roll wins. That's it. And if for every win you have to add 1 to your die roll. So someone will win a couple times in a row. Now they're trying to roll for the lowest. The other one's more likely to win. So it was sort of letting them just explore that. Here's a really simple rule set. Now just play it for a bit. And then I ask them afterwards, right? Who's more likely to win? Did you feel like you had a chance to win or didn't have a chance to win? And they might say, well, I was not doing well at the beginning, but the other guy had to add so much to his number that I figured I had a pretty good chance from then on. And just make them think about those things. That one didn't even necessarily need a much of a follow-up. If you can just put something out there that makes them think, I think that's really a really important aspect of putting games in the classroom. Just make them think. Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you so much, Scott. That was great. That was a lot of you and not a lot of us, which is
Yeah,
exactly
Oh,
I
how
don't
we
say.
like it.
yeah.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure I was supposed to apologize for that or not. I felt
No, no, you
No,
were
no,
kind
no.
of
brilliant.
You
dominated.
do all the work, and we get all the
Oh,
praise. It's
oh,
lovely.
okay. Yeah.
It works.
All right. That's a
It
great
works well
system,
for us.
actually. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We're about
Mhm.
to wrap it up, but if you'd like to talk to me, you can reach me at Senfeng Lim on Blue Sky. You can find Hafiz. Where can they find you, Hafiz?
They can find me on Instagram at Printer Ink Games.
And you can find both of us at Meeple Syrup on
Mhm.
most of the things, pretty much. Yeah.
Mhm.
Scott's website is bsgames.ca. And Scott, what is the
Correct.
game that you're most likely to, or you're selling right now? Is the
Oh,
abstract game, right?
yeah. Well, we've got Mathematician's Duel just had a reprint in November. So we're excited about that. And we've got Sonoda, which is
Yep.
deep strategy abstract, a super easy rule set, which got people asking us, oh, so you do like thinking games, like math games, right? We're working on a game right now where you punch a rubber sheep. You put
Sold.
it in the
I'm
middle
in.
You
of the
know,
table. You all just take turns punching a rubber sheep in the middle of the table. It's stupid, but everyone who plays it has a great time. So I had to modify it a bit, to make it more marketable, but we're really enjoying it. Working on another one right now that is
Race to the middle.
dinosaurs. Yeah, we got
yeah.
dinosaurs. It's called Survival of the Middleist. We want
Mm.
to do something a little bit different. So the idea is a meteor is about to crash into the Earth. A bunch of dinosaurs are racing across the board, but only one of you will survive. It's not the one who's the furthest ahead, not the one that's furthest behind, the one in the middle. And in order to move your dinosaur, you have to play a card. You get cards; they all have numbers from 1 to 18. A little bit more involved in that. But when you play your cards simultaneously, then you flip them all over, you compare the numbers, and whoever's number is in the middle gets to move their dinosaur. Everyone else's doesn't move. So you're always trying to decide: do I want to win this hand? Do I not want to win this hand? Do I want to try to get the middleest number or not? So we really leaned into this middleest thing. And we mostly just did that because there are very few games that do that. We want to try something different, right? Talk about your inspiration. We just use something in the middle. And I think one thing, because you mentioned it, selling Sonoda and Mathematician's Duel, one thing we're kind of excited about is that we are doing looks like a summer Indigo tour where we're going to different Indigo chapters. The most of them are Indigos now. I think a couple still have chapters on the front. But there's 4 that were signed up right now. You know, they do the thing where the authors will be there selling their books and you get to meet the author and they're
Yeah.
doing like a local book tour. We're doing that with games. So we're going to be there playing Mathematician's Duel and Sonoda at several local Indigos. So this Sunday, in fact, we're going to be in Burlington. And then July 4th, we're in Cambridge. And then July 18th, we're in Milton. And then September 5th, we're doing Guelph. Because these stores have started carrying our games now. You're not going to find it in every Indigo because we're not centrally. We're doing consignment the same way that the authors do. They go to their local Indigo and they do the consignment. Not everyone does non-book consignments, but the ones we've talked to so far have been pretty enthusiastic and
That's really
happy
cool.
to have us in there. And if you have an Indigo near you and thinks they should carry our games, you should maybe talk to them and maybe get them to call us, and we'll talk to them and get in there. And if enough do it, then what happens is what we've heard is that the central office starts to go, these things are selling, but only in this region. But why are they selling well in this
Why?
region? Right?
Yeah.
And they go, well, because they're only in that region. In which case, the central office goes, shouldn't they be in every region? And then they can
Oh, so
onboard
the
them
the
like
tail
a
wags
regular
the
product.
dog. I see.
There
I
you go.
see.
That's the idea. So there you go. So that's what
The
we're up to.
pull through effect.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, everybody.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
what's happening next week, Hafiz?
Yeah. What do you do next week?
Yeah, next week we have Chelsea from Urban Capers, and we are going to be talking about. So, Urban Capers does murder mystery capers, and so we're going to be talking about murder mystery capers and the future of escape rooms and scavenger hunts.
Yeah, fun. All right, everybody. If you want to help keep the lights on, go to patreon.com/maple syrup. But other than that, we'll see you next week, same time, same place. And we'll be talking murder mysteries, escape rooms, scavenger hunts, all sorts of fun stuff. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks so much. Thanks, Scott. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Oh, also
What?
remember
What?
that at the end of the month, we have our well, not ours, but Joe Slack and the rest of the crew is doing Proto Spiel North in
Yes.
Toronto on the what is it, the
26th to
23rd,
28th. 26th to
26th,
28th.
26th, yeah, 26th, 27th, 28th
Yep.
at the
26th.
Legion on
Yeah.
the West End. So
Yeah. It's at Jane and Dundas.
yeah, so hope to see you there.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's a great time.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.